Good afternoon, dear all. I am Stavroula Thravalou, and I will be presenting on behalf of my colleagues Natasha Kotsoni and Mrs. Maria Philokypriou a field study regarding the typological and morphological analysis of sachnisi. While in general terms, vernacular dwellings are simple in form and structure with limited morphological elements, the sachnisi is a particularly interesting architectural element that is widespread across the Balkans and the Eastern Mediterranean region. It is usually timber projection with multiple openings constructed on the upper floor, as you can see here. The term sachnisi is of Persian origin and implies a sitting point with a view, in this case, a viewpoint of the street. Many ethnocentric and often competing claims regarding the origin of the sachnisi have been published by scholars. However, cross-cultural exchange is evidenced as this element has survived in many locations and has many morphological variations. The prime virtues of this projecting volume is that it offers a valuable extension of the indoor space. As you see here in the first floor plan, the sachnisi extends above the pass-through space of portico that connects the street with the internal courtyard. Due to the multiple openings on the main and the lateral sides, sachnisi can provide enhanced ventilation and adequate daylighting levels throughout the year. For this reason, it is used in a multifunctional and seasonal way, accommodating many household activities. In the case of Cyprus, being at the crossroads of many conquerors, from Venetian to Franks, Ottomans, and British, the morphological and typological analysis of this heritage artifact is of particular interest. Luis Salvador, who visited Nicosia shortly after the departure of the Ottomans, reports around 150 buildings with sachnisis in the walled city of Nicosia. In order to conduct an holistic study interrelating historical, cultural, and environmental factors in a meaningful way, the first step of the study was the critical overview of the urban and built development of the case study area, the historic center of Nicosia. Second step of this study entailed the mapping of the remaining stock of buildings with sachnisis. The mapping was based on the historical topographic maps and the visual inspection of the building facades. For each building with sachnisi, the following parameters were recorded: the building typology and orientation, number of sachnisis, number of openings per facade, window to wall percentage, type of sachnisi according to the construction techniques. As you may see in the photographs, there are three main types: timber frame sachnisis, stone build, and decorative stone build sachnisis. Passing on to the results of the study, the mapping process led to the identification of 233 buildings with sachnisi. 13 buildings incorporated more than one case of these constructions, so the total number of sachnisis is 246. The spatial distribution of the identified cases is presented in the map here. As observed, the greatest number of buildings with sachnisi are located in the west part of the walled city, particularly in the quarters of Arab Ahmed and Karaman Zaid. This reflects the high level of craftsmanship and the aristocratic character of these quarters, which were the traditional residential areas of the Armenian community until 1963. We also notice some streets and clusters with higher concentration of buildings with sachnisi, for example, around the religious monuments in Hagia Sophia or Phaneromeni quarters, and Perikleu Street in Tabakhane quarter. In terms of building typology, around 71% of the identified buildings with sachnisi follow the three-bay arrangement, which is depicted here, as you may see. 19% of the buildings are double bay, and 10% are single bay structures. A further characterization was made depending on the length of the sachnisi on the building facade. So the first case corresponds to sachnisis occupying just the length of the portico, as you may see here, even if it's in a single or double bay or triple bay, three-bay building. Second case is sachnisis extending further from the central part, which is the portico, towards one lateral direction, or towards two directions, so both sides from the portico. The cumulative results reveal that the three-bay building with sachnisi projecting just above the central part of the portico is the main building typology by far. In terms of construction techniques, the vast majority of the recorded cases, specifically 89%, are timber structures. Stone-built sachnisis are limited and mainly consist a morphological transformation of the original timber construction. Also, in 92% of the cases, the roof of the sachnisi is an extension of the main roof of the building rather than a separate building component. The general outline of the timber frame comprises of vertical studs, direkia, as well as horizontal and diagonal wooden beams, which are called tabania and yandes, respectively. The gaps between the timber frames are filled with small pieces of raw material, bricks, stones, adobes, etc., comprising the wall element of tsatmas. Another technique is the simple lath and plaster technique called Baghdadi. Both types are plastered. Cases of unplastered sachnisis are very rare. A characteristic example is the case of Angeorgakis Cornesius, here in the middle. The length of the projection towards the street ranges between 80 centimeters and 1.2 meters. As you may observe, there is a great variety in the morphological details of the supporting elements, which reveals the capacity of craftsmen as well as the social and financial background of the owners. Cantilevered beams may be simple wooden brackets or can acquire the form of a corbel. In the case of stone-built sachnisis, the supporting corbels have many decorative details following a rather eclectic approach. In many cases, diagonal bracing are added in the beams with variable level of detail, as you may notice in these pictures. The number of the supporting beams actually indicates the number of rooms it corresponds to. In this case, information regarding the interior arrangement of the building plan is provided from the facade. Last two parameters under investigation are the percentage of openings in the main facade of the timber sachnisis, as well as the number of openings per orientation. As far as the sachnisis orientation is concerned, no predominant orientation is noted. According to a previous study of Thravalou and Philokipru, who analyzed urban scale parameters and environmental aspects of buildings with sachnisi in the case of Nicosia, street canyon geometry and orientation were not the prime drivers for the configuration of these architectural elements. The gradual depreciation of the climatic criteria for south orientation was a consequence of unprecedented housing demand and several phases of urbanization. Regarding the mean number of windows on the main facade of the sachnisi, Up to 6 windows are noticed, yet these are rather singular cases. In the majority of the sample, there are 2 windows on the main facade of the building, of the sachnisi, and the window-to-wall percentage is 32%. On the lateral sides, window-to-wall ratio is 55%. In conclusion, this study was the first comprehensive field mapping of sachnisi projections across the walled city of Nicosia, revealing 246 cases. A number of valuable lessons derive from this analysis. Firstly, that the sachnisi can be used as a tool for reading the building typology. As demonstrated, it corresponds to an extension of the interior rooms, mainly of the portico. So by considering the length of the main facade and the number of the supporting beams, indications regarding the interior arrangement of the buildings may derive. Secondly, sachnisis may reveal valuable information regarding the rich cultural and historical layers of the place. Morphological influences from various historical periods are evidence. For example, the simple forms of lines and lines of Ottoman providence or eclectic decorative elements. Also, important intangible values related to social aspects are revealed. The level of detail reflects the social and financial background of the owners. The spatial distribution and the mapping of these elements may also provide information about the character of wider urban neighborhoods. The demanding construction details and techniques for the treatment of the wood, which was not a particularly widespread construction material in Cyprus, also demonstrate the level of craftsmanship at the time of construction. The argument of intercultural exchange may be further supported from additional studies on the past training routes of the craftsmen. Finally, another point of reflection is the way in which occupants use the sachnisi space, and that is in a seasonal and multifunctional way. This is linked with the incorporated environmental design aspects, such as the adequate lighting levels and the enhanced ventilation potential achieved through the operation of the sachnisi's main and lateral windows. The above summarize the architectural, cultural, and aesthetic value of these projecting constructions that are of great significance. Their protection and conservation, therefore, is imperative, especially under the threats of physical degradation and lack of maintenance. I would like to close this presentation with some alerting remarks on the conservation state of these outstanding architectural elements. Unfortunately, lack and poor maintenance was widely observed through the in-city visit. Repairs with non-compatible materials and many cases in the verge of collapse were witnessed, especially in the north side of the walled city. This calls for immediate actions for restoration to be taken soon in order to avoid the risk of loss. Raising awareness in the local community and the public authorities is necessary if we want to preserve these elements that are under threat. Thank you very much for your attention.